Hello, people of the internet. This is Kaiju Noir.
And I'm Pete.
And welcome to episode 2 of Kaiju's Corner.
Kaiju's Corner.
You done?
Okay.
So, much like the first episode, where we covered a console that was recently replaced by a new generation of hardware, we are covering this time a portable system, which is the PSP. Yes, indeed, we're going to give you guys our retrospective look at the PlayStation Portable, Sony's first foray on the handheld market. So the PSP, it first came out in 2005 with not a lot of games per se, although as time went on, it certainly gained an audience over time, and it definitely had a lot of great games. In fact, before we started recording, we made up a short list of games that you and I both enjoyed, as well as very popular games that a lot of other people enjoyed. We found out there were a lot of great games for this system.
Now, I think what I mentioned to you when we were talking about it is there were plenty of great games for the system. However, I feel like throughout the years they were pretty much spread out. I want to say that's how it was. But nonetheless, like you said, there were some pretty good ones, and I'm pretty sure there's some hidden gems that we haven't found ourselves yet. But if the more we play these games, the more fun we'll have with them.
So I just want to know, what year did you get your PSP?
I was definitely a late one when it came to the PSP life cycle. I want to say I got mine sometime around maybe 2009, 2010. Definitely much later than most people, but I still got to play my fair share of games. How about you?
I got mine in 2007. In 2005, I ended up getting a DS first in 2005 because I noticed that there were more games available for that system than there were for the PSP. And when it came to the PSP, I was very intrigued by it because, the advertisement showed that it was a very powerful machine and it had very impressive technology. Because much like the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 2, this system was made as a multimedia device where not only can you play games, you can also play music, you can play movies, you can go on the internet, and you can use it as it uses a storage device in the form of a memory stick, which was able to hold quite a lot of information. And I think it was I don't think it was the first, but its use of storage, its use of memory in the form of a storage card was very not innovative, but it was an aspect that made it very appealing.
I would say it was a bold move because nowadays you see a lot of games are actually available for digital download. I mean, that's how Steam works. Everything's through digital download, and you might not be putting it on an SD card. You're actually putting it on your hard drive. But yeah, digital downloading is a very popular thing nowadays. And to see it on the PSP where you could put it in a thumbstick, not a thumbstick, but what are they called? Because
memory stick.
Memory stick. And the only bad thing I didn't like about it is that the Sony ones are very specific. You couldn't put any SD card. It had to be the Sony Pro Duos. In case you didn't remember.
Right, and if you ever want to use that memory stick on anything else, you'd have to get a memory stick to SD converter in order to use it on a computer.
Yeah, so admittedly, it was a bit of a hassle, but like I said, the fact that you could get a nice size SD card and put a lot of your games on there,
or music, or other types of files,
eliminated the need to be lugging around a case full of games.
Right. Although the whole digital download thing didn't really take off because a lot of the focus was on the new UMD format. What were your thoughts on this disc? It
was definitely different. I mean, I remember when seeing all my friends have it, seeing all my friends play with them. I was always concerned how the disc worked, whether they'd get damaged much easier. But to this day, I still haven't had any problem with any of the discs that I've used or any of the UMDs, anyways, that I've played. Like most of the games that I've had for a really long time, played just fine. And I can't always say that about some of my other disc-based games.
Now, for me, the UMDs were a very weird format of video games because, like, it was a disc, but it was in a plastic case, and you put the disc and the case in the system at the same time. And I was never really comfortable with the UMDs because it felt like you couldn't really take them anywhere without a carrying case. Now I know like Nintendo, they are very dedicated to using cartridges, especially when it came to their handhelds, and you can easily take around those cartridges and you don't have to worry about them getting scratched at all. With the UMDs, it's very hard to, unless you had a carrying case specifically made for, for UMDs. They always felt, unless you had them, they always felt very fragile, I guess. Normal. So I'm not really that big of a fan of the format in general, especially when it came to the fact that it was a format made for a handheld device.
I like how you put it's basically a cartridge with a CD inside. What would you call that? It's like a hybrid of both worlds.
Yeah, you're right. It does. It's kind of like a disc and cartridge at the same time. But unlike a cartridge, which is hard plastic, where if it gets scratched, that's okay. With these ones, if it gets scratched or broken, that disc inside is vulnerable.
Now, couldn't you make the argument that the contact points could get damaged on a cartridge?
I guess you're right that like because the DS cartridges, their contact points were very exposed as opposed to say the Game Boy Advance. But so far, like for the years, I've rarely had any trouble with any of my DS or cartridges, and same thing with my 3DS cartridges.
Well, let me ask you this: have you lost any of your games? Because they're pretty damn small. I mean, they're like. Ugh.
Yeah, but at least that makes them more portable. And no, I have not lost any of them. I mean, yes, I've misplaced it here or there, but I always found my games. Okay, man, I take good care of my games. All right.
I believe you.
Now, as for the when it came to the UMDs working, there was one game I had that just did not work. It just refused to work, and that was my copy of Death Junior 2. I don't know why, but just like one day, just went, I'm done, goodbye, and it never loaded. Then Sony, they were really promoting the heck out of the UMDs. They were making like a lot of having a lot of movies being sold on the UMD format. And that format, when it came to movies, just quickly died a quick, painful death.
I mean, yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. The only movie that most people seem to have, and it was funny because we were all in high school at that point.
Let me guess. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children.
You read my mind. Yep. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Because 2005 was the year the movie came out, right?
Maybe.
And that was the year that everyone made a big fuss about it. I mean, heck, I didn't know what Final Fantasy was until Advent Children came out.
Yeah, but that's like I was mentioning. That's the one movie that everyone seemed to have. That's the one movie that everyone cared to have.
That, and there were certain PSP bundles that came with a movie, but even then it would normally be a digital download movie. I've seen I noticed that like a lot of movies whenever there's like a movie being made for that was being released on UMD, it was normally either a Sony or a Fox movie. And I noticed being the kind of person that I am, I noticed that Godzilla Final Wars was released on UMD. And that always seemed to be whenever they're advertising the UMDs on, let's say, on the insert piece of paper inside the PSP cases, Godzilla Final Wars would always be on those list of UMDs, along with, like you said, Final Fantasy Advent Children. Why do you think the UMDs never really took off as a format for movies?
Well, I mean, one of the things you mentioned is, well, first of all, you have the cartridge itself. They weren't really that portable. Like you said, they could get damaged at points in times, and it's just easier to have something as a digital download. And if you just have it,
I'm sorry, but were digital downloads available back in 2005?
I don't think so. At least not for the PSP. Not that I'm aware of. They might have been, but not to the extent they are today. Especially what they had. I think what they had at that point was you could put in the CD, put in the game, download a piece of it. So if the disc ever got damaged, as long as it could somewhat read the game, even current consoles have this, it would still play the game because you have part of the download. Now having the download only wouldn't allow you to play the game. You needed both, but it allowed the game or movie to run much more smoothly. But just carrying a movie with you, and I'm pretty sure there wasn't that big of a variety with movies either, like you mentioned. I think that's why I didn't catch on. You know, it was more like, you know, oh, you want to watch a movie? You got Advent Children. What else do you want to watch?
I think that maybe I think there were other options like portable DVD players, and perhaps were laptops able to play DVDs back in the day?
Yeah, no, yeah. They I think laptops have been able to play DVDs for quite a while now.
Okay, so I think there were definitely better options to play your movies with better quality.
Yeah, not just that, and this is before, you know, a lot of smartphones started coming out. Because nowadays we're comfortable watching a movie on our smartphone or something along the lines like that. Before the PSP, you know, it's a nice size screen, but at that point in time, you know, you have you're used to watching a movie like you said, on a portable DVD player or on a TV. You know, it's fun for playing games, but I mean, are you really gonna watch a movie on a small screen like this? My phone screen is bigger than the size of my PSP screen now, so that's kind of crazy.
For those of you who don't know, Pete the Genius here just dropped his phone. Now, when it came to using the PSP as a storage device for games, videos, and music, as well as comics later down the road, what were your thoughts on that aspect of the system?
Cool ideas, but unfortunately, like I mentioned, I got my PSP on a very late life of its cycle. At that point in time, smartphones could pretty much do everything that the PSP could besides playing those games, but they could store my music, my pictures, my photos. So unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to experience that as other users did. How about you?
Before I ended up getting my very first iPod, my PSP, I was using my PSP as an MP3 player, and I really enjoyed that. I really like that aspect of the PSP. As for videos, I didn't you put too many videos on it simply because I think they simply took up too much space in the memory stick that I had. Now, when it came to games, I was really surprised at how many games you can actually fit on there. But actually, I'd like to get into that a little later down the road. So, one thing I really like to get into is the actual design of the PSP itself. Now, we didn't talk about the design of the Wii itself, other than the controllers. But with the PSP, it's something that you're holding in your hand, so it's something that has to be comfortable.
Overall, I find the PSP to be very comfortable. I think the one complaint I hear most everyone has.
Hold on, let me guess again. The analog nub?
Yes. That and the lack of a second one are the most common complaints I hear, or I heard from PSP users at its prime.
And it seemed to be like a complaint that was eventually addressed with the PSP successor. But again, that's another thing we'll get later down the road. I liked the design of the PSP. I thought the screen was appropriately large. The buttons were very responsive and clicky. I really actually did ended up having problems with with the analog nub on my first PSP. It was something where it got to a point where all of a sudden the deep, like whenever I was on a menu, it would like the cursor started moving on its own. And whenever I had a character, the character started running in one direction for on its own for some reason. So yeah, I did have trouble with my analog nub, but in a later version of the PSP, it was very responsive. The only problem I had was the L and R buttons, where I would have to wrap my finger around both of my index fingers at the edges of the on the sides of the PSP, which kind of had my fingers in a very bent position, which kind of made it look like I was about to take a photo on like an old camera, where you're like over exaggerating your button, your finger over the button. I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe. This being an audio show and all.
Well, let's take a quick poll. When it came to designs, because we're talking about the PSP, don't you? More of a question. Do you think the PSP had a much more nicer, sleeker looking design than the DS did?
I don't know. I would probably say no. Well, the PSP definitely had a better design than the original DS system. However, when the DS Lite came out, I think that had a better design because it was very square, rectangular, and it had a clamshell design, which allowed both screens to be protected, so you can easily put that in your pocket. With this one, you need to have a screen protector for that system, especially another thing I really did not like about this system was its this does not apply to all systems, but it seemed like the majority of PSP systems had a piano black surface which could attract dust and fingerprints from all across the universe. And yes, I just stole that line from Dr. Ashens.
I agree with you to an extent, but I don't know. Like, I honestly, I really like the design. I hope I'm not the only one that feels this way. But I feel like it's a really, really nice, sleek design. Maybe it's because I never had a DS, unlike someone here. But
hey, man, it's your fault we can't make an episode on the DS.
Sorry. Anyways, but yeah, like ever since I saw my friends with it, I thought it was really sleek, really cool. I always had good times when I was playing with my friend's PSP. I'll give you that right off the bat. It was a sleek, sexy beast that you could fit in your pocket, take out, play games, and that was really the end of it, really, because that's what I primarily used it for.
Now this is the part where I'd like to get into the different versions of the system, because there were 4 overall. We had the PSP 1000, the PSP 2000, which was slimmer, sleeker, the PSP 3000, which was even more slimmer, more sleek, and the PSP Go, which was a very dramatic makeover.
The dreaded PSP Go.
Yes, that not only did it dramatically change the design, but it was not compatible with any UMDs. It was all digital download only.
And from what I remember, I'm just showing it out there. From what I remember, I don't believe the digital download market for Sony games was that big at the time. Sure, nowadays we have PS1 classics. We have a lot more PSP games are available on digital download.
PlayStation Network games.
Exactly. However, even if you look back at some games, not all of them are available for digital download. And some of your favorite games, if you had them on UMD and they were not available for digital download, well, guess what? That's the end of that. You can't play the game, and that was a big downer, and I think that was a very bad move on Sony's part to release PSP like that.
Now, I heard that in Europe, if you were to get a PSP Go, you have like you have the offer to download 4 PSP games for free or something.
Oh no, that's not worth it to me. I mean, if I had my favorite game of all time, I have quite a couple, but if I had my favorite game and I couldn't get it on the next PSP. First of all, what's the purpose of even getting a new PSP if you already have a perfectly working good one? But again, the fact that I wouldn't be able to play the games I already own, no, just no.
And looking at the system itself, now I own a PlayStation Portable 1000 and a 3000, the Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker edition, which had the nice plastic matte, I think that's how you pronounce it, matte finish. So it's not all dusty and fingerprinty. It's all like solid plastic. Anyway, I only had the 1000 and the 3000, and I never even touched or seen with my own eyes the PSP Go, but it looks very uncomfortable to hold.
From what I remember, I think it was smaller, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was smaller, and it had less battery, I think.
Really? Do you remember if it... I'm trying to remember because...
I think your hands were close. It's like a very smaller system, and the buttons were all crowded together in the middle because it had this weird slider function like a lot of phones at the time.
The basic gist of it is the PSP Go was ultimately I think everyone who I ever talked to, even when the PSP Go came out, I didn't have a PSP at that time, but everyone I talked to was like, no, we all dislike the PSP Go.
Right. And it seemed like it was a system ahead of its time, but it just did not have the... It came out at the wrong time. It was very inconvenient to people who already had a PSP at the time. I mean, the PS3... The reason I got the PSP 3000 I got my PSP 3000 around the time where the PSP Go just came out, simply because it was a much cheaper system, and I can play all of my old games on it. So before we go into some of our favorite games, Pete here would like to talk about the Sony Xperia Play.
Yeah, actually, a couple of years ago, I don't remember if it was like 2 or 3 years ago, which is funny because that's actually recent, you know. Sony released the Sony Xperia Play, I believe that's what the phone was called, and their marketing campaign for the commercials were hilarious. Have you seen them by any chance?
Did they happen to involve that character Marcus?
No, it could have, but the commercials I'm referring to involved, I believe, a comedian called Kristen Shaw. I think that might be her name. I'm not too sure on that. But basically, she would present present the phone as a phone, and then all of a sudden she would break out in an army situation or a military situation, just claiming how much you can do with Xperia Play. It was just really funny. It was a really funny commercials that really attracted me to the phone. I would never buy one, but it was just a really really fun experience. Just seeing the commercials themselves seemed a lot better than the phone itself.
I never looked into that Sony phone all that much. I remember reading on a certain issue of Game Informer that it was able to play PlayStation 1 games or something like that.
It was a PSP. It was basically a PSP Go and a phone.
Huh. I wonder why that never really that never got as big of a. It really didn't get that big of a commotion.
Well, like I said, those commercials, they got a lot of views, but like I said, I think the commercials themselves were much more popular than the phone / game system itself. Which almost reminds me, what was that system called? I know someone tried doing that before. I think it was the N-Gage. I know we're going.
Yeah.
That was
it's okay.
The Nokia.
Yeah, I think Nokia. Yeah, the Nokia. That was the one that looked like that. Everyone makes those taco jokes. I think that. Yeah, that's what it was called. So you ready to talk about games?
Oh yeah.
All right. So we'll just be talking about some of our favorite games as well as some of the most popular games that came out for the system. What was the first game or games you got for your PSP?
That I can actually answer, surprisingly. I think the first game I played, if I'm naming it correctly, I believe was Coded Arms. I believe it was a really weird game. Like it was a sci-fi shooter, and you'd go around shooting things. That's the best I can describe it. It wasn't anything amazing, and I had a decent time playing it, but I wasn't too into it. So it was pretty lackluster for my first PSP game. Again, considering I got it late into the life cycle.
For me, I got 2 games when I first got my PSP. One was Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai. I love Dragon Ball Z. It was like one of the first. It was like one of those shows like I saw early in my childhood that just sticks with you. And I played. It was my first Budokai game actually. I played Budokai 3, I believe, but this was the first one I owned. And I love that how it was very easy to get into that game. Because I noticed, like with the previous Dragon Ball Z Budokai games, you had to add a lot of upgrades to your character. Here, you just play through the story, unlock the characters and their transformations, and there you go. And I really like the story. It was kind of like it took like the movie Fusion Reborn and just add a lot more content to it, seeing characters interact in the way you've never seen before in the anime, such as adult Gohan meeting young Gohan, or young Trunks meeting older future Trunks. Did you ever play either of the Budokai games, the Shin Budokai and Shin Budokai Another Road?
Unfortunately, I never got the chance to.
Did you ever play any of the Budokai games?
I have.
That's unfortunate.
I think the only game I played was one of the original PS2 games, the PS2 Dragon Ball games. I think the Tenkaichi, was that one of them?
Yeah, that was Tenkaichi.
I think that was the only Dragon Ball Z game I played on PS2 and above. I haven't gotten much past that myself.
The second game that I got at the same time was Mega Man Powered Up, the remake to the very first Mega Man game. It was actually the first Mega Man game I ever owned. Now I know you're probably gonna crucify me because you're a hardcore Mega Man fan.
No, I'm pretty sure this is one type. These titles are some of the ones like we're most excited for. Am I right? Or?
Right. I mean, I saw. I was like, whoa! I knew who Mega Man was. I mean, I grew up with the original, with the cartoon that was on Fox Kids at the back in the '90s.
Me, I grew up with X. Like I still have doodles from my elementary school of me drawing X and Zero. And the sad thing is, I only had Mega Man X1 to play for the longest time. I always wanted to play X2, and I wasn't able to until later on. Mm-hmm. But oh my god, the adventures I had with Mega Man X were unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I also did grow up with the Mega Man NT Warrior, which was an adaptation of the Mega Man Battle Network games. And yes, I loved Mega Man Powered Up. I know a lot of hardcore Mega Man fans seem to not like it all that much because of the mostly due to the chibi style chibi art design. But I loved the game. I loved playing as all the different bosses. It was like one of the hardest games I ever played. I mean, there's like hard, like there were 3 difficulties: easy, medium, hard. Easy felt like normal. Normal felt like hard, and hard felt like F you. You're gonna play this. You're gonna get your butt kicked playing this game.
Impossible.
Impossible.
But God, that's the only downside. I was a Mega Man X fan, and I wasn't too crazy on the original series because eventually when I did get to play it, I got my butt kicked. And this is before I played the PSP version. But I was definitely excited to play the PSP version because the things that were added. When I saw you playing it when I was in high school, I think it was in high school or middle school, one of the two.
Yeah, because actually, bro, I remember it was cool thing was in band that, our band director didn't care that we brought our systems in because, we played our instruments, we got our time to play.
Yeah, so we were the band kids that would sit and play video games in a corner. But all I could do was...
Hey, we didn't have our own corner, okay? We had our own band room to mess around in.
But I would always stand in awe, and occasionally I get the chance to play as well, while you and some of our other friends would be playing Mega Man Powered Up.
Right, and which leads me to the next game I quickly got afterwards, Mega Man Maverick Hunter X, the remake to the first Mega Man X game, which I'm pretty sure by that sound you're already excited to talk about it.
Oh man, like I said, Mega Man X, the first one, that was literally one of the biggest influences of my childhood. Like, all I could ever imagine was playing as Mega Man, being Mega Man, playing as Zero. So when I heard there was a remake for Mega Man X1, I was super excited. And whenever I got the chance, I would take my friend's PSP, including yours, and I remember I would take it from you so I would be able to play that game, just to be able to relive those moments. And God, was it worth it. I loved every moment of it.
Same here. I love, you can definitely tell it was the same classic Mega Man, but it had just enough differences to make it more awesome. I love that you get to play as Vile. You get to change out his different weapons because he had the cannon, his arms, and his kneecaps for some reason can use as weapons. Yeah,
Vile mode was awesome, but I think we all know what we really, really, really would have wanted.
Okay. Let me guess for the third time. Zero.
Yes! Growing up as a kid, all I ever wanted to do was play as Zero. That's all I ever wanted to do.
So I'm guessing you never got to play the Mega Man Zero games on Game Boy Advance or the Mega Man Zero collection on the DS?
I did. But as a kid, it felt like an eternity. I never thought I'd be able to play as Zero. Because you gotta remember, in Mega Man X, spoiler alert, Zero dies.
Yeah.
So I never thought I'd be ever to play as Zero. I didn't get to play Mega Man X4 till much later in my childhood. Maybe while I was in middle school.
That was the first one that features Zero as a playable character?
The third one was the first one that features him as a playable character, but not a selectable character.
Ah.
Yeah, he was a character that you could summon, but he wouldn't fight bosses. You could do the stage with him, but not the boss. And it was at this point where he already had the blade.
Ooh. See, I think the reason why they never made Zero a playable character was because at that point he never had his sword, so if he was playable, then he just would have been a slightly more powerful version of X, kind of like Proto Man was in Mega Man Powered Up.
Well, I never went into Mega Man lore, which is funny, but the way I see it, I don't I've always wanted to find this out, but it makes sense that you can't play as Zero and 2. I mean, he's dead. You're trying to rebuild him. And it makes sense that you can play with him as 3, which I really love that. I just wish they made him a selectable character. But I always felt, and it's probably listed somewhere, that the sword that Zero has was Sigma's. You know, in X1, you fight
Yeah, he does have his sword.
Exactly.
Although I think his sword was a lot slimmer, right? Like less. Zero's sword was more wider than Sigma's.
That's true. How oh God, there's so much Mega Man stuff I could talk about this all day. Because you got to remember, on Mega Man X6, no, actually, Mega Man X4, you fight Colonel, and Mega Man X5, Zero dies. So again, so X takes his sword. So come Mega Man X6, Zero is using Colonel's blade, which is more reminiscent to Sigma's blade. It's more of like a lightsaber in that sense.
You're a goddamn nerd.
Shut up. All I ever wanted to do as a kid was play Mega Man.
Well, this is coming from the guy who has an unhealthy obsession with Godzilla.
That's very true. So you can be quiet now.
Anyways, the next game we have on our list is Little Big Planet. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Little Big Planet series. I own Little Big Planet 2, Little Big Planet Karting, and of course Little Big Planet on the PSP. Now, I think that was the last game I ever got for the PSP, and while it was a very watered down version of the first game, it still had a lot of fun levels, and in its own way, it was sort of like a very Mario Brothers-esque type of gameplay. It was like the Mario Brothers for the system itself. Did you ever play Little Big Planet? Any the Little Big Planet game, PSP game?
I did, thankfully, because of the Sony issue that happened a couple years ago.
Right. That when PlayStation Network was hacked, and as their way of saying we're sorry. They gave us the choice to get like couple free PS3 and PSP games.
Which I will admit, that was a very nice move, Sony. Thank you very much. But next time, don't let that happen again. That's the game I chose to get for the PSP, and I had fun with it. I'm pretty sure I'm not as big of a Little Big Planet fan as you are, because I mildly enjoyed it. It wasn't a game I stuck with for a long time, but like I said, it was a fun game. It was a fun platformer, and I think there was even level creation in the PSP version as well.
Right, but I played I've tried looking for good levels, and the user created levels in that game were nowhere near as inventive as the ones on the consoles. Nor is the costume customization as deep. I mean, for one thing, you cannot. You see, in the first game, you can put stickers on your character, and the stickers act as paint. So if you were to like increase the size of the sticker and put it on the hat, then you make the hat whatever color that sticker was. You can't do that with this game.
Now let me ask you this: when playing Little Big Planet, did you ever make like your Sackboy a specific character?
All the time.
If I can ask you this, who were you a majority of the time? Like the biggest majority of the time, who would you be?
The Green Ranger.
Oh my God! Why is that not a surprise?
It's morphin' time. Dragon Sword.
Well, for me, simple answer, Metal Gear. It was either Solid Snake or Raiden.
Well, that's not character creation. I bet you downloaded those costumes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not speaking of specific character creation. I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, like who would you?
When it came to downloadable costumes, I'd be Rorschach.
Rorschach. Okay. Actually,
I can't believe I can't.
That again is not a surprise actually for me. For me to hear that from you actually.
You know, I'm surprised that they even made Watchmen costumes for like character. They made costumes based off an R-rated movie for a game rated E10 and up. Not E10 and up, but E for 10 and up. E for everyone.
That's quite peculiar.
So the next game we have on our list is, okay. This is a game I think that only I played. The Gundam vs. Gundam games. Now, there was a series of Mobile Suit Gundam games called the Gundam vs. games. It was like, I believe it was like Federation versus Zeon. Then there was I believe it was like Gundam versus Zeta Gundam, and I think it was there was a versus game based on the Gundam Seed series. And then you had this one arcade game called Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam vs. Gundam, which took characters and their mechs from all the TV shows and movies and OVAs and put them together into one big fighting game. It wasn't really a fighting game, it was more like a third-person action gameplay, but with multiplayer. It was very fast-paced, very chaotic, and it was so much fun to see all these robots fighting each other in a way that I've only, as a Gundam fan, I've only dreamed of. And then there was the sequel, Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam vs. Gundam Next, and the PSP iteration port, Next Plus. And they added more characters, more stages, more music from the show, from the different shows and movies. And that was actually like I think it was like the only time where I've got an import of myself a Japanese game, importing it from the country. And that has to be my favorite PSP game of all time, simply because it's like the game of my dreams. Being able to have like the God Gundam go up from Mobile Fighter G Gundam go up against the Wing Zero Custom from Gundam Wing Endless Waltz. Instant OMG moment for me. The next game is a game that we actually played. The both of us actually played. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep.
Oh God, where to start? That Kingdom Hearts has always been a franchise that's been pretty dear to me. Again, I got my PS2 pretty later in its life cycle, so I got to play Kingdom Hearts 1 later on. I would always play Kingdom Hearts at my friend's house, of course, because that was a game to play. That was one of the games that made you get a PS2, and you would see commercials for it. You'd see all your friends talk about it. So eventually, you had so many Kingdom Hearts games on the system. You had Kingdom Hearts games on the DS, and you finally got a PSP game. And luckily, I was able to get it, and I fell in love. It's a prequel to the original. It takes place a
couple years before any of the other games.
I think it's not that far away. It's only like 9 years in the past, which is insane that all these situations happen there and then. But again, it's definitely my favorite. Well, I can't really say favorite since I haven't played the DS ones. But I have a feeling even if I had, it would be my favorite portable Kingdom Hearts game.
That seems to be the case with a lot of people. Birth by Sleep had a very excellent story. I like the three main characters, Aqua, Terra, Ventus. It really filled in like a lot of gaps from the throughout the whole series, and it had an excellent gameplay. I think I heard that the gameplay for Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be based off the gameplay for Birth by Sleep. And I feel like this was an example of a game that where the thing I like to point out is that a lot of American video game companies really stopped supporting the PSP, like probably about 3/4 into its life cycle, where it felt like nobody started making games for it, no movie tie-ins, no cheap cash-ins, nothing like that. So it seemed like the only PSP games that were worthwhile were coming from Japan, and especially coming from Square Enix. So I'm really glad that we were able to get Kingdom Hearts here stateside, of course, being a game where you have a bunch of American cartoon animated characters show up.
Actually, I agree. Could you imagine if that had only been a Japanese only port? Because there's a lot of games that happen like that.
Right, like the Gundam versus Gundam games. I had to import the second one for me to play it. Now, there was a Final Fantasy game, I think it was called Type 0, that never got localization, even though one was already made for it.
Oh my goodness.
And another game that was again Japanese. It seems like Square Enix was really pulling its weight for when it came to this system. Another game we like to get into was Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. That one that was very popular when it came out.
Yeah, again, that was one of the games I unfortunately missed out on. But like you said, so popular. And anyone I knew who had a PSP had the game, which was unfortunate for me. All I really knew about the game is that it had a very very, very strange leveling system.
Oh yeah, it was actually it was kind of like a slot machine where you had to wait for all like three dials to line up, and if it happened to be like 777, then you go up a level. I'm not really sure how that worked, but I did like its real-time fighting system. That's why I loved about Kingdom Hearts is that like I'm not really that big of a fan of turn-based unless it's say like the Super Robot War series or the Pokemon series. But I like it where you're like in the middle of the action and it's like all real time. And Crisis Core really delivered on that. It provided a very nice story, very excellent, very thrilling boss battles, and a very satisfying entry into the Final Fantasy VII mythos. The next game we'd like to talk about is the Death Junior series. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about the Death Junior games was because Death Junior was one of the very first, if not the first, games to come out for the PSP system, and there was a lot of hype built up for to this game, and it really did not it failed to deliver. But there was enough support where there was actually an actual sequel made, and that did got a decent response from gamers and critics. Did you ever play either of the Death Junior games?
Again, since I came into the PSP at a later life cycle, I did not have the chance to play them. There's plenty of games I missed out on that I feel pretty bad, and I wish I could go back and play, which you probably will go back eventually. And I already have so many games to play that I'm playing.
Did you ever heard of the Death Junior games?
I have. Obviously, I would always look at Game Informer magazines, and they had a lot of Death Junior got a lot. I want to say because I remember seeing it all in Game Informer magazines, but I feel like Game Informer gave Death Junior like a lot of coverage. You would see it often, and you would see like pages made for Death Junior, like a little ad here and there.
Right, because it seemed like they were trying to make Death Junior like the big franchise for in order to sell the PSP. I played the first one. It was very frustrating because the thing is, I really enjoyed the world made for this game. The world of Death Junior felt very Tim Burton-esque, and me being a big fan of that art style, I really got into the characters and the story. The gameplay was kind of very iffy because it was a combination of close combat with the scythe as well as gunplay with a lot of projectile weapons. They really fixed the issues in the sequel, and the stories and characters were much more fleshed out.
If you don't mind me asking, what was the story to Death Junior?
Well, the Death Junior, you play as the son of the Grim Reaper. Death Junior, also known as DJ by his friends. They go on a field trip. He has like his group of friends are very like weird and oddball. You have like two conjoined twins. They're like super intelligent. Oh. You got a goth girl who is obsessed with unlocking doors and chests and anything with a lock. She feels the need to unlock it. You have another girl who has holes in her hands that bleed whenever she gets nervous. And finally, you have this one character who's like this weird giant test tube creature with no arms and legs in a giant filthy test tube. And finally, you have a dead guppy. Yeah.
Dead guppy?
Yeah, his name is Dead Guppy, and he is a dead guppy.
Wow.
He's apparently like all the funny. There's this running gag where all the characters they're like, "What do you think, Dead Guppy?" Wow, that's deep.
That's really different.
Yeah, and that's why I really like that. Like I said, I really like that world that they created, and I really wish that that Death Junior would have turned into a franchise. I mean, there were several comic books made. I think they were released by Dark Horse. I was able to find them, and they were rather interesting to read. Anyways, moving on, there was Daxter. That was a very popular game early in the PSP's life cycle. Now, I know you didn't have this game, but were you familiar at all with the Jak and Daxter series?
Yes. I have heard of the Jak and Daxter series. Was that also made by Insomniac?
That was Naughty Dog. No, not Naughty Dog, but I know that I think it was I forgot what it was called, but the company that made Daxter was made in San Diego.
Real? What? No way.
Yeah, I think it was like San Diego Studios or something related to San Diego because they were the ones that also made the Mod Nation Racers game, I believe.
Well, that's interesting. But I am familiar with Jack and Daxter. I vaguely remember playing the first game when I was younger. Again, I was always a generation behind.
Mm-hmm.
So when everyone had the PS2, I still had my PS1. So when I had the PS2, it was much later in its life cycle, seeing as everyone already had the PS3.
Well, I gotta say, from experience, Daxter was a very enjoyable game. The character was very funny. He did get on your nerves, but that's just who he is. I've only played Jack 3, but I was still able to enjoy this game on its own. Very great gameplay. It worked surprisingly well for there was a 3D platformer, and even though it despite having one analog nub, had very excellent controls. The only problem was that there was not much to do after you beat the story. You can't go back and fight the bosses again. There's no extra missions, nothing like that. So it was once you're done, there's not much to do with that game. Another game that we both had was Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max.
Yes. God, I love Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max, but I cannot get over how tough Bison was. Bison in that game is a jerk of the highest caliber.
Now, that was a game that was actually one of the very few games that we actually played together, like multiplayer-wise, because the thing with the PSP was it really didn't have that great of a multiplayer it didn't really have great multiplayer capabilities. I mean, much like the DS, some games had a function where if you play one game, you can have like multiple players play with one UMD, but the loading would take forever. And there were very few multiplayer-centric games that we played, but Street Fighter was one of them. In fact, do you remember how we used to play that game? How we used to play with one UMD?
Yep, I remember this. I remember we were actually in our history class, and I believe it was history class. And what you would do was you would take the game, you'd start up multiplayer, you would take the disc out, put it in our other friend's PSP, put that game in, take that disc out again, put it in yours, wait for it to load, and then start the fight after like a couple of ins and outs.
So basically, you're tricking both PSPs into thinking that both systems have the same game, even though you're sharing the same UMD disc, which is something you could not do with any cartridge-based game.
I guess that's
system.
The
advantage.
I guess that's the advantage. Except I wouldn't really see that as an advantage for Sony. It's more of like an exploit that people are able to find, and that's always a fun stuff. And you can find small little exploits, small little things that help you as the gamer.
But as for the Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max itself, it's Street Fighter. It's portable. It's got a ton of characters. What more could you ask for a portable Street Fighter experience?
Other than a boss who's not that big of a.
Now a fighting game that only I have played, and that's nowhere near as good as Street Fighter, was Ultraman Fighting Evolution 0, which was I think the latest in the line of Ultraman fighting games that unsurprisingly has never come to America. Gee, can you guess why? Well, it was my first. It was the first time I've ever played any of the Ultraman Fighting Evolution games, mostly because the other games were only released on PlayStation 2, and you cannot import those games because it wouldn't work. And it was a pretty decent game. It was not that the fighting system wasn't that deep, but it was a game where if you were a fan of the Ultraman franchise, it'd be something you would get a kick out of. If you're the kind of if you're the person who doesn't know the difference between Ultraman Jack and Ultraman Leo,
like me,
then it's not for you. Now, not a game, but a particular series that you and I'm sure can get into is the Metal Gear series. Metal Gear.
By far, I think this actually surpasses Mega Man. I'm not sure as of late, but Metal Gear is by far one of my most favorite and cherished franchises of all time. Like, I love the series. It is an amazing series, and the best part of it all is the PSP just happened to contain most of the Big Boss Saga, which is my favorite part of the Metal Gear lore. My absolute favorite.
Now, even though I played Peace Walker, when it comes to the Metal Gear series, I've only played the ones where you play a Solid Snake. I played 1, I played 2, and I played 4. And like I said, Peace Walker. I didn't get a chance to play Portable Ops, and I'm pretty sure neither of us has touched the Metal Gear Acid games because, well, I didn't knew what Metal Gear was when Acid came out, and you were like, oh, it's non-continuity. F that.
I have to admit, it's kind of a dumb reasoning, but I feel because it's non-canon, it's not on my list of priorities to play. It's a different gameplay style as well. So like I said, I'll get to it eventually, maybe. It's not a priority for me. For now, I want to keep involving myself in the actual Metal Gear lore, and just especially with the trailer for Metal Gear 5. Oh, more Big Boss.
Okay. Well, as for Peace Walker, which is the only PSP Metal Gear game I played, it was very fantastic, very deep, just as deep and engaging as the console versions. One thing to notice that this is like one of the few times where you had a video game company other than Square Enix to really push the PSP's capabilities to its limit. I mean, of course you would have, because it's like the graphics are so rich and detailed, there was quite a bit of a drop in frame rate, but it didn't really negatively impact the games all that much.
Here's another kind of neat fact. Actually, I think out of all the games that are canon, this was the only game that was actually rated T.
Really?
Yeah. Instead of actually having blood, when you kill someone, what they usually do is they have a pixelated skull. So if they're dying, that pixelated skull will start I think it's either filling up or clearing out, and basically when it either fills up or clears out, it means they're dead.
Oh yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned before was like you mentioned before. Internationally, in Japanese, they were still supporting the PSP in later years, right?
Right.
And that's actually exactly what Peace Walker did. Peace Walker came out late in his life as well.
What did I say? Kingdom Hearts was the last great game? No, which one came last? Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep, or Peace Walker?
It could have been Peace Walker. I think Peace Walker might have come out in either 2011 or 2010, so I'm actually not too sure.
Either way, it'd be very fitting to have Sony's biggest franchise have its serve as the swan song to the PSP. Now, there have been other games that have come out for the PSP system, like Rock Band Unplugged, GTA Vice City Stories, Loco Roco, Luminous, Patapon, Ape Escape, Power Stone Collection, and the Dissidia Final Fantasy fighting games.
Yeah, Darkstalkers
Collection.
SpongeBob Adventures, Dora Sing Along.
When compiling this list of games, it's very surprising. Like I said before at the beginning of this podcast, it's very surprising how many good, excellent, quality games there were for this system. And I was thinking to myself, why did this system fail? And then I just quickly realized why it did fail: piracy and emulation. Now, you see, the thing is with the PSP, for some reason, maybe it was due to an oversight, the PSP ended up being the easiest system to hack in the history of modding video game systems. I mean, you can easily. I'd hate to toot my own horn here, but I had my system modded to the point where I was able to download games for free off of certain sites and try out all these amazing games, and purchased very few.
Wow.
In fact, the only reason why
Shame.
Hey, I'm sure you've downloaded your share of games.
Shame.
Well, anyways, the reason why I bought Gundam vs. Gundam Next Plus was because at that point, it was impossible for me to download that game, so that's why I bought it.
Not just that. For me, there's been times where like you find a game that's so good that you downloaded that you decide to go out and buy it because it's a product that you love and that you like and you feel like they deserve your money's worth. That's how I feel sometimes whenever I download a game that I can buy. If I like it that much, I will actually buy it.
Unfortunately for me, if I have the option to download it for free without paying, there's that temptation. And really, when you're already playing the game, you're like, at this point, why do I want to buy the game? Just continue playing, this digital copy that I downloaded. And apparently a lot of people did. They were taking this game system and were did all sorts of tricks with it, and there were really good emulators made for the system. I mean, it was thanks to the PSP that was able to play NES and Super NES and Genesis games for the very first time, because I did not grow up with those older systems from the 80s and early 90s. I started out with the Nintendo 64, so being able to go back and play all those older games on the go on my PSP was able to add a lot of I guess you could say replayability for the PSP, which in this case makes the PSP, in my opinion, the best and worst console of all time.
That's funny. Portable console.
Yes, the best and worst portable console of all time.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's been worse. I guess you could say the best and worst mainstream, somewhat profitable console of all time.
Well, not so much, not that profitable.
Okay.
Because eventually, I think it was very late 2011. The PSP was finally succeeded by the PlayStation Vita,
The ultimate failure.
which I like to refer to as the PSV. I'm not really sure why many people don't refer to it as that. So yeah, as you stated before, the PSV isn't really doing so well, much like its older brethren. Why do you think this is the case?
We've talked about this before. Now, first of all, you've got to look at the price. I think the price on it was pretty steep when it first came out. But I mean, when you look at what it can do, it's somewhat justified. It's got the power of basically a PS3 in your pocket.
Right.
So it's a very strong system. However, from what I remember, the title of games that came out were very lackluster, and that's usually the case, right? And they start out with not always the strongest names, but they grow their library. But that's something that Vita hasn't been able to do. Much like the Wii U, which we talked about last time, it's been suffering the same things. Like especially with third party support, they don't get the support that they've been needing.
I think it does have the support. The only problem is that the majority of the games you can find on the Vita, you can find on home consoles. I mean, like it's very cool that you get to play Mortal Kombat. You get the portable version of Mortal Kombat is almost exactly like the home console version. But if I want to play a home console experience, I just play it on my home console. Especially when if the portable version is slightly inferior. Might as well go with, in my opinion, might as well go with the better quality version.
And then you also have the competition. I mean, you have the 3DS. I mean, what would you rather have, the 3DS or the Vita?
Well, considering the fact that I have a 3DS and not a PS Vita, I'm pretty sure that speaks for itself.
Right. The 3DS. I mean, it's a very, even the DS before that. They're very competitive. I mean, those are. You don't really hear about other handheld consoles nowadays. It's either the phone or
iPad.
Phone. That's what I mean. Like phone, iPad. All those relatively have the same apps, the same games. So it's either like the mobile games, or it's the 3DS or a DS. So that's what you normally see people using nowadays if they're playing mobile games.
And it seemed like that was the case. I can see those sort of electronic devices that you mentioned seem to have influenced the PS Vita, where in that it has both a touch screen on the front and a touch pad on the back. So it seems like that's their way of trying to get the attention from the people who enjoy touch screens from like the iPhone or the DS. Do you think the PS Vita will last any longer in the months to come?
I hear they're gonna try more integration with the PS4 and the Vita. However, I ultimately I really think the Vita at this point is a lost cause. You don't hear much about it anymore. Many things aren't covering it anymore. I haven't seen commercials for it. We actually, at my job, we had Vitas on clearance. It just doesn't seem to be going well for the handheld market with Sony.
That's very sad to hear because at the last couple of E3s, the Sony has really been trying their hardest to promote the system, and it seems like they're actually trying to force developers to have some sort of PS Vita compatibility with with all PlayStation 4 games. And I have like a friend of ours has a PlayStation Vita, and he has the Vita version of Little Big Planet, and the cross compatibility or whatever it's called between Little Big Planet 2 and Little Big Planet Vita was very impressive. So there is a lot of I see potential in this game in this system, but it seems like people just aren't willing to spend that much money on what is essentially a portable system made for a portable experience. I think that's what it is. You just don't. It just doesn't have the right kind of games for a portable experience, I guess.
And it's a shame too, because I remember when hearing all about the PSP Vita, I was relatively hyped. I liked the sound of it. I liked what it could do. You heard people talking about it all the time, but when it came down to the actual selling point, no one bought it, or not many people bought it. I mean, like you mentioned, one person that owns it.
Yeah, well, only one person we know owns it. Whereas,
I didn't even know he owned it because before today, I've honestly known no one who's owned a Vita.
And yet there's like 3 of us who owns 3DSs.
3DSs or the older PSP.
Yeah, I think pretty much all of us own a PSP.
Yeah, so it is a shame what's happened to the Vita, and no doubt what will continue to happen with the Vita. Like I said, I don't see it. I don't see it having a comeback.
It seems like the history of the PS Vita seems to parallel with that of the PSP, wherein that they're both, on a technical scale, they're superior to their Nintendo competitors. Yet, it seems to have proven that better graphics do not make a more successful system.
Exactly, I couldn't agree anymore.
Well, let's just hope for the best. And even though the PSP is kind of looked down upon by the majority of gamers, we can agree that the PSP has definitely left its mark in history as the little console the little handheld that couldn't.
Yeah. And ultimately, our PSPs, they were a great ride. I mean, I had so many fun experiences with my PSP. I remember just like in middle school, you guys playing the PSP was such a fun pastime. Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, you showed me some videos on the PSP, like the Angry Video Game Nerd videos.
Right.
That's the first you had introduced me to them from your PSP.
Same here. I was introduced to the Angry Video Game Nerd around that time in 2007, I believe. My friend of mine put who first told me of the nerd, put a few episodes on my PSP, and yeah, had a lot of fun with what the PSP could do.
Yeah, so like we mentioned, I really wish there was a future for the Vita, but it's still to come. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. Maybe there'll be a new thing coming out soon, something new, a replacement. You never know.
Hopefully the PS Vita will have its own Peace Walker or own game or definitive title like Peace Walker or Birth by Sleep, and not just simply ports from the consoles. Well, that is episode 2 of Kaiju's Corner. We hope you have enjoyed it. And until next time, everybody, take care.